Hi, person of interest. So, person of interest is a science fiction, crime, drama serial that I used to be really hooked on to. It has at its center something called the machine. It's been programmed by this reclusive, brilliant billionaire called Harold Finch. The machine is like the proverbial big brother, it knows everything about everyone. The machine is used to solve crime problems and potential terrorist attacks and stuff like that. I would, in fact, recommend that you watch it if you haven't already. Now, what if I told you that what was portrayed in Person of Interest is not really science fiction but a reality? A reality that is several orders more intrusive than what the machine already was, and that there is not one single machine but millions of them, big and small, spread out over the world, and that you and I are a living, breathing part of this reality. Now, that would become a tad worrisome, wouldn't it? See, anecdotally, we already know that whatever we do online is tracked, processed, recorded, analyzed, and so on, right? We feel a bit spooked when we talk about going on a vacation to Goa while catching up over a cup of coffee with a friend, and then next thing we start seeing ads for flights to Goa and hotels in Goa on all our online feeds, right? But how does this really happen? Let's peep into one world, which is a world of apps. Okay. Now, an app typically talks to the phone via something called permissions. Permissions are like the vehicle via which data is extracted by the app from the phone, and certain activities on the phone are kicked off by the app. Okay, I like to think of permissions like the good old sipping straw that we use while drinking from a glass of juice. It's the straw through which data comes out, and it's also the straw through which you can blow bubbles into the juice as well, right? Through kick off some activity in the phone. Now, most permissions are required by the app for the app to function. Okay, some of these permissions, however, are what are called highly dangerous permissions. And why are they dangerous? Because of the kind of data that they have access to, or the kind of activities that they can kick off on the phone can severely compromise the individual's privacy. For example, accessing your camera, accessing your microphone, reading all your SMSs, or taking a look at your calendar or your contacts. Now, that is something which would be intrusive, right? Now, the story doesn't end with permissions and spookiness. Okay. All apps also have something called external SDKs, which are actually pieces of code that are embedded in the app to create some kind of functionality. Okay. Now, mind you, these belong to folks who are different from your app maker. Okay, think of SDKs as those yummy chocolate chips that are there in your favorite ice cream. They blend so well, yet they give a little added flavor to the ice cream as well, right? Now, the only sour bit in these SDK stories is that they also get access to all the sensitive data that gets extracted via permissions by the app in which they're embedded. Okay, and each of them further processes it and shares it further, and then that gets worrisome. Think of the number of apps you have on your phone, right? And this is just the world of apps and phones. But if you think about it, the reality is that anything out there that is smart or anything that is online is hungrily sucking up data about you. Every app, every site you visit, every smart device that is scattered around your house, your smart TV, the smart speaker, even the smart doll that your daughter probably interacts with, the smart car, the traffics with embedded IoT on the road, the garbage cans, your smart electricity meter, the shops that you walk past with the sensors embedded in it, every single payment that you make or using a card, whether it's online or offline, Every time you scan your fingerprint, even when you're, say, for example, visiting a friend in her apartment complex, right? In fact, when you think about it, you have to think really hard about where your data is not being collected today. In my head, I picture this phenomena like a giant invisible vacuum cleaner that surrounds me, sucking up data about me all the time. Okay. Now, often when I talk about this, people find it tough to believe. The common refrain is that, oh, is this really happening in India? So let's take a look at some data. My company does an annual study of the state of privacy of Indian mobile apps and websites. And the results of the study actually never fail to stun me every single year, despite me being in the privacy profession. The study essentially tells me that the few apps that I have loaded on my phone to make my life simple are enough to have have all of me stand exposed. For example, 71% of the apps on my phone know exactly where I am at every given point in time. And no, these are not the taxi hailing apps or the food delivery apps. My bank knows, my wallet knows, my music app knows, my news app knows. Okay. Approximately 6 out of the 10 apps on my phone have access to my camera. Half of them can read my contacts, half of them can record audio. So what is left? And if I say that I will avoid my phone and let's say just use the browser and the web interface, life is not very different over there. For example, on an average Indian website, there are 22 external parties, those lurkers like those chocolate chips, which are embedded in a regular app, and I'm not talking social media and all that. Okay. In fact, I should share with you something that I've not really shared with anybody before. 5 years ago, I was building this picture of myself in the year 2025. I'm, of course, several kilos lighter. I finally get that silver nose stud that I've been planning for a while. Just that it has smart sensors built into it that tracks my body's parameters and sends them to my dog. I finally listen to my friends and get myself a smart pair of spectacles, which also allow me to record some stuff that goes on in my meetings. I have this fancy car which senses my mood every single time I board, and based on that, plays me some music. At the same time, checks my calendar and decides the destination and lets my driver know accordingly. Meanwhile, the fridge and the cupboard in my home have figured out what needs to be reordered and have placed an order automatically with my favorite online grocery vendor, right? I mean, it sounded fun 5 years ago. Today, it's a nightmare. I'm furiously backpedaling on that dream, and I don't want to go anywhere near there. Okay. But the big question is, so what? So what if all this data about you is out there? What happens to this data? Well, at the very least, it is used to track you, profile you, and build very detailed digital personas about you, which are then further traded and used in real time auctions by various people. Who does this? Well, these are actually huge interconnected networks of advertisers, data brokers, profilers, analysts, publishers, and what have you. Basically, thousands of companies, all interconnected into one tight integrated ecosystem. Believe me, it's a $227 billion industry worldwide today. Okay, and businesses pick this up to serve you ads, to suggest products, to cater to your preferences, and so on. So that's good, isn't it? Maybe, but it doesn't stop with this. The same data is used to decide for you what you see, what you read, what you watch, what you hear, and so on. So the news that you see is often different from the news that your neighbor sees because you have two different digital personas. Or if you run a search, the results that you get are different from the results that your colleague gets because you have two different digital identities. So, what happens as a result of this? Again, the question is, so what? What's the big deal, right? Over a period of time, this all leads to us living in what are called engineered echo chambers. You have you ever wondered, for example, why do you keep seeing feeds from people who agree with you, who have opinions or beliefs which are similar to yours, and you don't hear from people who have contradictory ideas so often? Is because you live in that echo chamber, and you haven't created that echo chamber. Somebody else has created that for you, right? An extreme example of how this can pan out was the whole Cambridge Analytica scandal that happened, where entire elections were engineered because of this ability. And mind you, that happened 5 years ago. So imagine how advanced and sophisticated we are in today's world, right? The sad reality is that today we as individuals have completely lost control over our data. In our delight of getting everything free online, we have missed the fundamental point. That is, that we have become the product and not actually the product that we use. I'm going to say it again. We have become the product. Just that instead of paying with cash, we are paying with our data to use certain free facilities online. That's the only difference. Okay. Now, the only way this can be controlled is by bringing in laws and regulations and standards and best practices across the entire ecosystem. And where, very sadly, India is really lagging behind. You know, we are a country of over a billion mobile phones. Digital India is galloping ahead. Smart cities, smart governance, digital payments, and whatnot. All of this is spewing forth data that is being sucked up by that all encompassing vacuum cleaner around us. And this data is available for the whole world to do whatever they feel like with it. Okay? Which is why we urgently need our data protection and privacy law. Okay? When I talk of privacy in India, many people counter it by saying, oh, privacy in India is a joke. We are a country where we give our entire life history to the stranger sitting next to us on the plane or bus or train, right? But that is missing the whole point. For the next 10 generations, we'll keep sharing our life histories with the stranger next to us on the plane. But while we are swapping life stories, the gadgets and the surroundings around us are sucking up our all our data and flashing it out to the whole world to play around with it, with us having no control over it. That, my friends, is the problem. And that is why it is beyond time. It is long overdue that the next billion people start taking control back over their most precious commodity, their personal data. Thank you.